Traditionally, it is believed that Thessalonian letters were the first Pauline writings. Polycarp, Ignatius and other early church fathers knew about these letters as Pauline letters. Thus, these letters were not criticized until J.E.C. Schmidt attacked Pauline's authorship of the Second Thessalonians. From that time onwards, many Pauline scholars studied these letters and only a few held the Pauline authorship of Second Thessalonians. The Thessalonian problem is basically the relationship between these letters. Therefore, the studies on the relationship have shown similarities between these letters and dissimilarities even with other Pauline letters. The Thessalonian problem is much to do with 2 Thessalonians because Acts of the Apostles provide no transparent historical background, whereas 1 Thessalonians has a clear historical background. Therefore, in this study, we are going to look at what are the sole problems with the letters to Thessalonians, such as the issue of authenticity and authorship, and others like inverted canonical order, eschatology, and audience of 2 Thessalonians. Historical occasion of Thessalonians. The city of Thessalonica was built by Cassander in his wife's name, during the 4th century BCE. Paul in the second missionary journey revisited the churches already established in Western Asia. Acts chapter 15 verse 36, 41. It was at this time, Paul was guided by the Holy Spirit to Macedonia. Acts chapter 16 verses 6 to 10. Paul, Silas and Timothy reached Thessalonica from Philippi, where they found a synagogue. Acts chapter 17 verse 1. They stayed in Thessalonica for 3 successive Sabbath days. Acts chapter 17 verse 2. As a result of Paul's argument, explanation and proving that Christ needed to suffer and rise from the dead. Acts chapter 17 verse 3. Many Greek proselytes converted and the members in the synagogue were increasingly decreased. Thus, the church was increasing in number. And this raised tensions between Paul and the Jews in the synagogue. When Paul came to know that his resistance would be attacked at night, Paul along with his co-workers went into Beroea. Paul was deeply concerned about newly converted believers in Thessalonica. He wanted to know the situation in Thessalonica. Therefore, Timothy was sent to Thessalonica. Paul went to Athens and then to Corinth. Timothy and Silas joined Paul in Corinth. Acts chapter 18 verse 5. The report of Timothy was about Thessalonian believers' constant faith and love led Paul to write the letter to the Thessalonians. 1 Thess 3-7. Both the epistles were written not to deal with some crisis but to praise and rebuke, encourage and advise a church that was emerging towards stronger faith and was still finding the implication of their faith among their hostile world. The Thessalonians problem. A. Julacher says that, if we didn't possess 1 Thessalonian we would not object to 2 Thessalonian. Therefore, the Thessalonian problem is the relation between the two letters. There are similarities between the letters like words, phrases, content and even the structure of these letters. Likewise, there are dissimilarities between the letters. 1. The problem of the author in 2 Thessalonians. The relationship between the 1st and 2nd Thessalonian is the heart of the discussion about the authorship of the 2nd Thessalonian. The majority has concluded that the 2nd Thessalonian is a non-Pauline composition. It was started by J.E.C. Schmidt, and the following reasons are the major factors that led to the denial of Pauline's authorship. A. The eschatological difference between 1st and 2nd Thessalonians. B. A vigorous claim of authenticity in 2 Thessalonian 3:17 rose to doubt. C. 2 Thessalonian 2:2-12 appears to depend upon the legend of Nero Redivivus. D. 2 Thessalonians seem less intimate and personal than 1 Thessalonians. After W. Reed, it was W. Trilling who devoted himself to finding the authorship of 2 Thessalonian. The entire discussion on authorship can be categorized in 3 different ways: verbal and stylistic, theological, and situational characteristics. A. Verbal and stylistic characteristics. Trilling, Reed and H. J. Holtzman say the structure of both the letters is similar to each other and dissimilar to the other Pauline letters, indicating that it could have been written by someone in the same model of 1 Thessalonian. For example, the renewed thanksgiving of 2 Thessalonian 2:12 is also seen in 1 Thessalonian 2:12. There are also verbal similarities like effort of faith, 2 Thess 1:11, and achievement of faith, 1 Thess 1-3, and so on. Thus, There are many repetitions of words in 2 Thessalonian, which clearly shows the literary dependency of 2 Thessalonian. Zahn says that these literary dependencies are found in 2 Thessalonian because Paul used 1 Thessalonian to compose 2 Thessalonian. But Reed disagrees with Zahn and said 2 Thessalonian was not written by Paul. In line with Reed, Schmethal's also found structural similarities because of the editorial work done on the 2 Thessalonian. On the contrary, Ernest Best argues that there is no great similarity between the letters. He pointed out some differences, like the main theological discussion, 2-1:12, comes before the second thanksgiving, but in 1 Thessalonian it comes after the second thanksgiving. And there are 2 references to thanksgiving, 1-3, 2:13, and 3 references to prayer, 2:16, 3-5, 3:16. But in 1 Thessalonian there are 3 thanksgiving, 1-2, 2:13, 3-9, and 2 prayers, 3:11-13, 5:23. Therefore, Best says that these dissimilarities rather prove the authenticity of 2 Thessalonian, and it cannot be concluded based on similarities. Trilling concludes that, although these stylistic features alone allow no judgment about the authenticity or inauthenticity of 2 Thessalonian, but they speak more in favor of inauthenticity. There are also many differences in words which do not suggest literary dependence. Endurance, in 2 Thessalonian 1-4 is substituted for hope. In 1 Thessalonian 1-3, Lord, is substituted for God, in the prayers. 2 Thessalonian 2:16 ff is not an eschatological-oriented prayer like that of 1 Thessalonian 3:11-13. Thus, Best refutes the structural similarity and literary dependence of the 2 Thessalonian and increased the probability of Pauline authorship of the 2 Thessalonian.